supply chain,
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 Supply Chain Management with GDP Season 2, and this time it's bigger and it's better. We will pick up from where we left off and continue to discuss industry best practices, current affairs, effective leadership, and the latest innovations in the world of supply chain. The podcast is aimed at explaining the concepts of supply chain in the leanest way possible, one of the most efficient shows where you will listen to me covering through various important topics across the supply chain domain. I'm your host, Gagandeep Prabhu, currently working at Ernst & Young in their supply chain and operations consulting practice. So let's just jump right into it then. Hey everyone. Now here is a question for you to ponder over. Or maybe you were pondering for some time already. You would have seen articles like H&M cut ties with its suppliers, Apple cut ties with its supplier, Burger King cut ties with its supplier. So, why do they actually cut ties with their supplier, and what's actually happening? And what is supplier relationships all about? So, today we'll spend some time talking about what are supplier relationships, how do you manage it, why is it important, and how do you actually go about managing it? So, what is supplier relationship management? In simple terms, it's a systematic approach where you're evaluating vendors that supply goods, materials, or any kind of service to your organization and determining what kind of strategy do you use to improve their performance, which impacts your performance. Now, why is it important? It's because these days, buyer-supplier networks have become more global and interdependent. And companies rely more heavily on strategic suppliers. And these relationships create a framework for both identifying a strategic supply partner and organizing a relationship's lifecycle. It creates a kind of a common frame of reference to enable effective communication between the vendor and the supplier or the buyer and the supplier to measure the supplier performance. Now, a good example of this is how it impacts a business and its revenue and its opportunity in the market is Samsung's association with Staples for office supply has little influence on profitability, but Micron has a huge impact, making it a key supplier strategic partner. Any risk to Micron's operations is a major risk to Samsung. So it is really important that Samsung takes a good look on understanding how Micron is operating and how their operations or their productivity impacts Samsung's profitability. A 2020 survey of around 715 supply chain decision makers, 70% of respondents experienced disruptions due to the COVID-19 pandemic, while 44% indicated supply constraints and 35% faced global trade and tariff issues. Moreover, 95% of the respondents said that their company was affected by component shortages. Now, you can't avoid a global pandemic, but definitely you can improve your supplier relationships or strengthen it further so that you can bring value to your business. Now, how do you do that? Constant communication is one of the biggest factors. Keep in touch with your suppliers. Do not be that kind of a business, that communicates only with suppliers when things go wrong or when you're making demands. When situations arises or when things are changing on your side, inform your supplier about this. So second thing is your suppliers are not just vendors, because many organizations treat them like mere vendors. They actually own a part of your product or your company. So treat them like partners. Ensure that they understand your business and they're part of it. That will make them more accountable to the product that they're delivering to you. Constantly evaluate risk. Develop a habit of examining the risk while dealing with a supplier. Ask the supplier about, their years in business, how do they manage crisis, their previous work, etc. Understand how capable are they taking off orders of your scale and try to come up with a risk strategy. Let it be with one supplier or multiple suppliers. Be a good customer. That's really important because understand what their key points are, Do not set them up to fail where you are setting up contracts where you're blocking their revenue. Try to get it to them as quickly as possible. Have timely payments, have good feedback, ensure that you're loyal to them, and appreciate them as much as you can. Be mindful of cultural differences. Now, this is very important. A lot of the suppliers are based out of China or of Mexico. Understand their holidays, understand their timings. It's really important when you interact with them that you make them feel you are helping them grow in their business as well. Work together to understand their global standpoint, because every geographical location is different from one another. This will enable you to build a good rapport with your supplier. Now, understand your supplier. A good number of businesses do not take time to understand what the suppliers are. Developing a professional relationship with is easy, but understanding them is difficult. So your communication is effective when you actually understand them. You understand who their investors are, what their mission, objective, and how they operate. So deep dive into their objectives, what their mission are. Send orders promptly, make payments on time, provide the resources necessary for them to be successful. This will help them gain more traction and become more loyal suppliers to you. And lastly is invest in technology. Ensure you're constantly innovating, constantly diversifying, making sure that your technology is in sync so that your demands are out there, your production rates are out there, and any kind of numerous benefits that you can bring to the whole system in terms of eliminating any paperwork, increasing employee productivity, cost savings, and reducing process cycle times. In a gist, supplier relationships is being as human as possible. There's key aspects about understanding what your supplier needs are and bringing it down to what your product needs are and bringing it all together. Treat your suppliers like stakeholders in your business. It's definitely better for your organization as well as your teams as you understand what suppliers are. That brings in close to another episode of Supplier Relationships. Thank you so much for tuning in to Supply Chain with JDP. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, please do share this podcast and tell your friend about it. Thank you and good night.